pastime in my hut. I do a lot of reading. I've downloaded a lot of new music and movies. There's a lot of volunteers that trade media when we're all in the office together, so I've caught up on a lot of seasons of Modern Family and all the good stuff. But then also I play solitaire. But I mean, also beyond that, I spend time with my family. I'll spend time watching. There's not a sitcom, a soap opera called Generations. So every night my family gets together and watches that. So I find that to be really good time to bond with my family, and also get a little bit of insight into the modern South African culture, because the soap opera is all about that.
Passing time in my hut, I read a lot. I suggest you guys download the list of the BBC's top 100 books, and you'll get that list finished by the time your service ends. I also, sometimes I draw or write or bathe 4 or 5 times a day. I have my Nintendo DS, which is amazingly saves my life. I don't have electricity, so I don't get to watch a lot of movies. I don't get to watch a lot of TV shows. I have to be a little bit more creative about doing things, and that's why I said the DS saves me. I can charge that up once a week, and it takes me through the whole week.
Yeah, so running is one of the easiest workouts I think to do here in Swaziland. Running on the roads is a little bit interesting, especially on dirt roads. The sand and rocks and the hills make a big difference. But running, the Swazis are acceptable, or accept the running. They sometimes question what I'm doing, asking if I'm training or if I'm gajima-ing or running. And I have to wear a little bit more conservative clothes for running instead of the running shorts that we know from back home. But it's totally fine, and sometimes even the kids join in and run along with you. And then I'm training for the marathon in Cape Town, which is supposed to be one of the most beautiful marathons in the world. And it's a half marathon or an ultra marathon going on in Cape Town in April. So.
One of the huge advantages and disadvantages of being in Swaziland is that it's very small, so it's pretty easy to travel around and go to friends' sites and go to town and do fun things, but it's also pretty tempting when you're having a bad day just to leave and not come back for a while. So you have to definitely balance the two with allowing yourself time to get away and recuperate, but also make sure that you're not leaving sight all the time.
Being a small country that Swaziland is, it's actually the size of New Jersey, in case you didn't know that. And you actually get to see volunteers quite frequently compared with what I've heard from larger Peace Corps countries. And I think that it's a good thing, because you can get to see your nearest volunteer maybe just for the day. You can go hang out at someone else's site very easily. Even someone on the other end of the country, I really have no problem getting there.
I'm fortunate to have some great volunteers nearby me, so occasionally we'll all come together and have braai or, play cards, just hang out. And it's a good way to pull yourself out of your community, reflect on what you're working on, and also refresh. So that's really good. And then other times I'll visit volunteers in other parts of the country, which is fun because you get to see parts of Swaziland that even Swazis haven't gone out and experienced. So you get to go and visit rural areas in other parts of the country, other climates, other cultural ideals and beliefs. Yeah, transport is one of my favorite things about Swaziland. It's obviously a challenge to take public transport everywhere you go from one rural area to another, but some of the characters that you meet on public transport are probably worth a novel or two in themselves. Some of the conductors, the Kumbi conductors and drivers, and bus conductors, bus drivers, they're characters. It's fun.
Transport varies quite a bit. My transport happens to be very good despite living in the middle of nowhere. And my buses are always on time. And especially if you have a pair of big headphones, I recommend bringing them. Transport can be quite an experience. Sometimes a sensory overload.
So on the homestead, there's absolutely zero nightlife. You're actually out you're in a rural area and everything stops once the sun goes down. But if you are in town hanging out with other volunteers, there's a lot going on and there's a lot of fun stuff you're able to do. It feels sometimes a little too much like home.
And it can be, I mean, the whole issue of safety is, it's definitely a concern. You have to be just more careful and more cautious of who you're getting a ride with and things like that. But really, I mean, if you are careful and you know what you're doing, you can have a blast here. And there's a really cool music venue just down the road here, and you can definitely have a great time.
The best bar and restaurant in Swaziland is at my house. That being said, there are other places that you can go that will cost a lot more money. Maybe they're as much fun. I think we have as good a dance party and a music party, and the food is superlative all the time. The company is always wonderful. It's the best show in town as far as I'm concerned. There have been some interesting places that I've visited. House on Fire obviously is the premier location for everybody. I can't say I've ever had as much fun at House on Fire as I've had on a Saturday night at my house. I often say to people, it's not what's on your table, it's who's at your table.
There's a lot of different things that you can do during the nighttime in Swaziland. There's different bars and restaurants and hostels that you can visit, and oftentimes Peace Corps volunteers will get together at the hostels in town. They'll have a small get-together, a party, maybe go out. It's not often that we go out just because there's not a ton of bars or active nightlife in Baban or Manzini, and then also the financial constraints. There is a really awesome music venue called House on Fire, and they've got a big festival every year, but then also they have on weekends different musical events. I think being a volunteer in a small country like Swaziland, there's a lot of responsibility that you hold in terms of representing Americans here. It's a small community. It's not really easy to go out and not run into someone you don't know, or not be recognized as a Peace Corps volunteer. So with that comes a certain responsibility to, I guess, behave yourself or hold yourself to a higher standard in going out than maybe you would back home. So oftentimes, when we're out, we keep that in mind. Bushfire is an event held, I think, every May or June. It's a 3-day festival. It's held at House on Fire, which is a great music venue in Swaziland. And people from all over Africa come, musicians from all over Africa come. It's a big outdoor stage. A lot of volunteers will go and stay at a nearby hostel, and we'll shuttle between the hostel and the festival. But it's a festival that you'd expect to see back home. It's great music lineup, great cultural experience, lots of arts, crafts. It's a really fun time.
Alright, so we had the opportunity to go to South Africa a few months ago, and my parents actually came from the States, and we met them in South Africa, and we went to near Nelspruit, and we stayed there and went to Kruger National Park, which that place is absolutely nuts. There's a ton of crazy animals, and it's gorgeous, and it's easy to get around, and that's kind of where we've done our vacation so far, but there's so many more places. Cape Town is beautiful, and Durban, and
I had an opportunity at Christmas time to travel with a professional woman friend that I met in the capital city of Baban, and we went to Cape Town for 5 days. It was a beautiful, beautiful city, and we got a chance to see quite a bit of it. We hired a driver to take us around. However, it wasn't the African experience Mozambique was. Had a chance to go to Mozambique, again, 4 or 5 days. I loved the Mozambique experience, much more than the beautiful beaches. We spent most of the time in Maputo, did a lot of historical and architectural tours, and both cities were great, but it gave you a chance to compare the difference between Mozambique experience, the Cape Town experience, and the Swaziland experience. And it made me even more grateful that I was placed in Swaziland. I'm very lucky to be here.
So I've been in Swaziland for 2 years, and over the 2 years I've traveled extensively around the region. I was able to go up to Rwanda for a week back in 2010. I went up to visit some friends that I have up there, and I was able to do that via Johannesburg, so just traveling over to Joburg and flying up to Rwanda. I also was able to go up to Victoria Falls. I bungee jumped, which was awesome. Visited Zimbabwe and Zambia side. The falls were beautiful. A lot of volunteers go up to see the falls at some point during their service. I was also able to go over to Mozambique to visit the beach. I went up there for about a week, and you can sleep right out on the beach, on the sand, camping out there. And you travel via Maputo, so you get a little bit of the Mozambican culture traveling through Maputo. I was also able to go home to the States, so I spent 2 weeks in the States this past year over Thanksgiving. So we have about, I want to say, 50 vacation days over our 2-year service, so there's a lot of time to go see things in and around Swaziland.